in 2020, there's still a chance. We're still talking about the greatest quarterback to ever do it.
The 49ers topped the Seahawks late last night. The game was this close. Jacob Hollister stopped on the goal line with less than 10 ticks left. Niners take the NFC West, capture that 1 seed. So the Seahawks drop to the 5 seed and they visit Philly. Nick, how impressive is this San Francisco 49ers team?
It was a great win for them last night that they almost squandered at the end. They're up 26-14 midway through the 4th quarter. And then all of a sudden, Seattle has a 1st and goal from the 1. Spiked the ball. The delay of game Seattle took that took them off the mouth of the goal line while they were getting Marshawn Lynch in the game, while they were acting like they thought they had a timeout. Down 5, where Seattle has a chance to win the division, knocked San Francisco all the way to the 5 seed. It's one of the most consequential penalties I've ever seen in a team seemingly intentionally take. Like, Russell Wilson's still in the huddle when that delay of game happens, but San Francisco deserves all the credit in the world. They avenged one of their few losses of the season. Home field now goes through their building. Great win, extraordinary season for Kyle Shanahan and company.
Yeah, San Francisco finally went up to Seattle and got a win in the Russell Wilson era of Seahawks football, so they exercised that demon. And last night, they did it with defense. Even though Jimmy G was good, not great, I think the story for the 49ers was that defense making the plays when they needed to make them. Dre Greenlaw put his lines on the end zone, the end line, and made the tackle, didn't let Jacob Hollister fall into the end zone. That's a big-time play. They say football comes down to blocking and tackling. It's a cliche, but in last night's game, you see why it's true.
Seattle in the final 30 seconds completed 2 passes to the half-yard line, and neither one of them got in the end zone. Great job by the Niners.
All right, to Seattle's opponent, the Eagles, this coming Sunday. Philly clinched the NFC East with a win over the Giants. Carson Wentz led the Birds to 4 straight victories down the stretch. After a slow-ish start to the season, Wentz, who stayed healthy all year, finally took his team to the playoffs. Kenny, has Wentz silenced the doubters out there?
Yeah, I think he has. I mean, he didn't win the Super Bowl. He got this team to the postseason. I think there's still some work out there for Carson Wentz to do to silence all of his critics. But the fact that he was able to put this team on his back, that they have won 4 straight games where they were in must-win situations, I think that says a lot about him. And they were down 3 receivers. They were down Zach Ertz. He wasn't there. No Lane Johnson. They lost Brandon Brooks and Miles Sanders. And somehow, some way, they were still able to overcome all of that and win that football game. And Carson Wentz have some of the throws that he had in that game. Yeah, you got to say that Carson Wentz got the job done, and he's going to silence some of the critics with this performance and getting his team to the postseason.
And I think he silences almost all of them if they're able to win the home playoff game against Seattle, a game where they're only 1-point underdogs, a game Seattle suffered some injuries this weekend as well, like where all of a sudden I think they're very live in that football game. But Carson Wentz, you said it off the air, Canny, he's won 4 must-win games in a row. The Giants game, Washington, Dallas, and the Giants again. If they lose any of those games, and all those games except for Dallas, they are either trailing or tied entering the 4th quarter. They do not make the postseason. Carson Wentz stayed healthy this year, played his best in the biggest spots this year, and Doug Peterson, for all his criticism this season, 15-5 in December or later over the last 3 years with Philadelphia.
All right, finally, to the surprise of very few, the Cleveland Browns fired head coach Freddie Kitchens last night after 1 disappointing season as head coach. Cleveland had high expectations coming into the year, but ended 2019 with a very disappointing 6-10 record, a regression from their quarterback Baker Mayfield, and far more negative headlines than they needed and or wanted. All right, Nick, besides the head coach, what other changes do you think need to happen in Cleveland this offseason?
Baker's got to figure out what the hell happened and fix it. Now, he's a young player in this league, and it is the job of organizations to put the right coaches around young players in order to help them succeed. The Browns obviously this year did not do that with Freddie Kitchens, even though I'm sure that one of the big reasons they hired Freddie Kitchens was for that exact express purpose, but it failed spectacularly. Freddie Kitchens is now gone, but a lot of the blame should go to people other than Freddie, justifiably, because we can bang on their offensive line, but Candy, Nick Chubb rushed for how many yards this year?
Shade under 1,500 yards.
Right. Like when the Browns finished their game, he was the rushing champ, right? Yeah. And then Derrick Henry had a monster day and took it over from him. Odell had a bad year. Had 1,000 yards receiving. Myles Garrett, before he thumped Mason Rudolph on the head with his helmet, he was having the type of year we thought he could have, where he could maybe flirt with the 20 sack number, certainly blow past double-digit sacks. Yet the team was 6-10. They found a way any moment you had a little bit of hope for them to fall flat on their face, and they could not. Jenna, you were very curious about how they would deal with two things: a month of great success and a month of great failure. They couldn't get out of week one without tripping over their own headlines and their own news clippings. And so Freddie's now gone, which means the scapegoat's gone. The question for Baker Mayfield is, what way is your NFL career going to go? I still believe in him. I still think he can be a high-level NFL quarterback. But this year gets to be a mulligan for him, and they can blame Freddie. If he's terrible next season, then guess what? Cleveland, once again, for the 14th time since they've come back to Cleveland, is looking for a quarterback in the draft again, whether they want to admit it or not. He didn't have a bad year this year. He had a horrifying year this year. And so that is what needs to change for Cleveland. Their #1 overall pick, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, needs to get back to looking anything close to that.
Yeah, if Baker doesn't have a bounce back year in 2020, not only will they be looking for another quarterback, they're going to be looking for another general manager too. Because this all starts with John Dorsey's decision to hire Freddie Kitchens in the first place, a job that he wasn't qualified for. Going into the 2018 year, Freddie Kitchens was the running backs coach, and when they fired Hugh Jackson, they elevated him to offensive coordinator, and Greg Williams was the interim head coach. And they said since Baker had so much success in the second half of his rookie year, they were going to have Freddie Kitchens be the head coach because they were afraid that another team would hire him because they thought he did such a great job as the offensive coordinator. But the reality is Freddie Kitchens was put in a no-win situation by John Dorsey. Now, you can say it's because John Dorsey learned his lesson in Kansas City when they hired Andy Reid, and Andy Reid became the most important figure in that organization. They were going to decide to move on from John Dorsey. He didn't make that same mistake in Cleveland. But you also didn't give yourself a chance with the hire that you made as the head coach because the personalities on that team were too much for Freddie Kitchens to handle. He couldn't effectively set the agenda for the team, and that's where it starts. If you're going to have a young team, try to find a way to make a playoff push.
I said early on when they were making this coaching, searching the far and wide and all of it, I said Mike McCarthy was great. They brought him in and then they let him go, and maybe it was that reason. Maybe Dorsey had flashbacks of what happened in Kansas City. But they need someone to be able to corral the troops, if you will, a main voice that's not going to be friends with the players, but it's going to sort of have that discipline that they lacked on and off the field. What type of coach do you think they would use and need in Cleveland?
I feel very similarly to the Browns coaching search as I do the Cowboys coaching search, in that I do not want to take a risk. I want someone who has been an NFL head coach, because what you can't have is Baker Mayfield have to go through 4 head coaches in his first 4 years in the NFL. So Mike McCarthy, even though they passed on the first time around, that's an interesting name. The same guy I mentioned for the Cowboys, Leslie Frazier. I think I don't think Josh McDaniels would go within 100 miles of Cleveland, but someone with some coaching experience in the NFL that you know is not going to be a disaster. Because if you hire the wrong guy this time, Hugh was his first coach for Baker. Then you had the interim. Then Freddie for a year. Then if you hire a guy who it's like, oh, my God, he has no idea how to relate to NFL players, how to control lock, any of those things, you've got no chance of being successful in this league if you have 4 different head coaches in your first 5 years. So I don't think they can go for upside, Canty. I think they have to go for certainty in Cleveland, because they're not a rebuilding team, because they do have a lot of talent on this roster.
No, they do, and you need an adult in the room.
Yes.
I think that's the most important part of it, and I'm right there with you. You don't need a coach that's got boom or bust potential. You need a coach that can come in and have a high floor. Know what you get from that guy. Know that he's going to be the same guy every day, but most importantly, know that his messaging is going to be the same to the team week in and week out. That's the thing that Cleveland was missing the entire year.
All right, let's get back to the Dallas Cowboys now. Despite missing the playoffs, Dak Prescott played a terrific game yesterday to close out the season. 303 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and a win over Washington in what was the final game for him under his rookie contract. After the game, Dak was peppered with questions about his future and said he wasn't worried about a deal getting done.
Never thought about the contract this season and hadn't thought about it, and I have a great team and people that will handle that. When those talks come and when that happens, it happens. It'll be a blessing, but that's not why I play this game. I play this game for the love of it. My first love as an individual, and I'm committed to those guys in the locker room, my teammates, and that's what wakes me up every day. That's what gets me going, and that's why I play this game, and I play it with a passion and put so much into it. It has nothing to do with a contract or money, so I'm not thinking of that.
All right, Nick, did Dak Prescott prove that he is worth a big money contract this offseason?
No. He's going to get it, and this is just, people say it's the cost of doing business, it's the way it works in the NFL, you have to pay these. No, you don't. You do not have to. Dallas, you do not, no matter what anybody tells you, you are not obligated. It is not, subclause 6B of the CBA, thou must give Dak Prescott $145 million with $120 million guaranteed. You're allowed to tell this young man, who, by the way, conducts himself beautifully. I wish I had 10% of the maturity at Dak's age that I wish I had 50% of it now that Dak has, even though he's 10 years younger than me. He conducts himself flawlessly. He has been a wonderful face of the franchise. He has been in a league where you don't always get this, a really stellar citizen and leader. And I don't want to take anything away from him. But it's business. And you're allowed to say to Dak Prescott, here's our offer. We're going to offer you 5 years, $125 million. That's $25 million a year, and we will guarantee $75 million of it. You will never have to worry about money again. You will be set forever. We can continue on the track we're on. And if you want something substantially more than that, we're going to pull this back, and you're going to play for 1 year, $26 million on the franchise tag, and we're going to start looking around. And you can to mix metaphors, check Dak's oil, so to speak, as you would say. Like, see how he really feels about playing another